Alhamdulillah, I mean, the program is still Barakah Sahur, and this time is for us to join my ladies, mashallah, sisters. It's called Tea at Sahur, and today, what are they looking at? They're looking at healthy communication. Healthy communication in the house, at home, in the office, wherever you are, there must be healthy communication. And Ajabal Keys and Ajia Mariam Square, they are very much around in the studio. To you, mashallah, sisters.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, people. This is another episode of Tea at Sahur. Today, we're discussing healthy communication. This it made me chuckle because to a very large extent.
What does it even mean?
Healthy communication. This is passing messages or communicating and having what you intended received as you had intended. Without mixed signals, without it being misunderstood, or in some cases,
without hurting the other party.
Not necessarily, or not exactly. This is just passing your message across as you've intended and having it received on the other end as you had intended initially.
Through the rightful channel, of course, because sometimes the message could be lost in transmission.
What is the rightful channel? Let's cut straight to the main. What's the rightful channel?
Because, take for instance, in this kind of situation, this is us communicating. We have receivers on the other end, and then, there is a channel we're going to use to pass this message across the media, like, maybe TV or whatever. So now if you're trying to communicate with your spouse or your partner or your friends, you understand, how do you intend to pass that message across? What channel? It depends on maybe, the circumstances. It depends on, the mood. It depends on the relationship also. You understand? For spouses, for instance, you stay together. So it's all about ensuring that you're seen, you maintain,
that's communication.
Yes, and then you maintain this, what do they call it? Contact. You understand? Sometimes communicating could be just by signal. It could be just, through touch, gestures and all of that.
Yes.
So all of these things
That's
are
the
things
spouses.
that would...
How about for friends? Which is where a great deal of the miscommunication happens. With friends, with neighbors, with colleagues at work.
With spouses. A great deal of miscommunication happens, between spouses. Before you know it, there is this thing, especially if the line of communication is not open or transparent. There is always a misunderstanding.
Yes.
And
I think this aspect of communication is very important.
Very.
Because that's where your life begins.
Yes.
In the morning you wake up and you're with this person.
Exactly.
If there's no communication, it ruins your whole day.
That is it.
If your communication starts as unhealthy in the morning, your days just go...
It affects every other thing.
Exactly.
So sometimes it could be that maybe the lady wakes up with a cramp and then, it makes her moody or something, and then the husband is like, oh, what is up with this girl? Instead of asking you. Sometimes
if he asks you what the problem is, if he notices, or if
sometimes not noticing or not asking is also a form of...
But all of these things can actually they can be solved. Just talk about it.
Yes, exactly.
So now how do you communicate safely?
Safely is when you don't wait to be asked, are you okay?
Exactly.
If you're not okay, voice it out. Let him know, especially in the case of your husband, because sometimes he may not be able to see everything. Even if you expect him to see it, he's not capable. He doesn't have a superpower to just know
what's in your mind.
Yes,
so
exactly.
And it's also important.
So if you feel anything, you say it. If there are times that he sees it, fine. But if he doesn't say it, you don't speak offense.
In practicing safe communication, it is important that we're patient, we're tolerant, we are unambiguous in whatever it is we want to say. What you want to say it. Like, just say it outrightly. Why do you have to beat around the bush? You want to tell him
when it's necessary for you. You're not exactly beating about the bush, but you're trying to say things in such a way that you do not hurt the feelings of the other person, and so you're not exactly coming out right.
There is a line. It's a thin one, barely noticeable. You have to be careful of crossing that line. In the process of, expressing yourself, in the process of communicating and just letting everyone know how bad you feel about something or how good you feel, you should, of course, be conscious about the feelings. You should be sensitive, of the other person. But let us bring this back home to mothers. How do you communicate effectively even with your kids? And how then do you promote healthy communication between them? It's a huge task, trust me. Especially when you're still dealing with them right from, when they're little. And it is from now, that's from very tender age, that we actually have to, instill such values in them and morals to be conscious, especially that sensitivity aspect.
Your comment now, the communication with the kids brought to my memory this hadith about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he sent Anas bin Malik on an errand, and he found him playing or watching people play.
Yes.
And ordinarily, the typical Nigerian mother, in some cases, would,
in most cases,
twist
as a matter
your
of fact,
give you a knock on the head or spank your butt and then ask you what exactly you're doing where you are. But what he did, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was just go to his ear and say, "Is this where I sent you?" It takes a lot of patience.
yes,
And this is not just with kids, but most especially with kids and spouses. Patience. It's grating. Patience can be grating, but it's also satisfying when you do it the right way.
very.
So when you're patient, when you're displeased about something, and then you communicate in such a way that you're patient, and the other person, it gives the other person an opportunity to see what you're saying the way you have intended it.
Yes.
Unlike if you were trying to say something when you're upset,
Yes.
or when you are.
The true essence of the message would be lost.
Yes.
It should be
When you're
lost.
not patient.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And this
And then-
patience, of course, we know how much value Allah SWT places on patience.
And then
in the
now, what
Quran,
do
there
you
is
do?
several
What do you do in a
verses.
situation where you try as much as possible to be patient, to do whatever it has to do, not to get misunderstood when you pass across a message, and you still get misunderstood? Then there's going to be need for you to be more patient
Yes.
to explain.
And to
And
try
that's-
to understand the
it
other
is-
person's, just try to put yourself in the other person's shoes.
And
You
that
understand?
can be really, really difficult.
It can be difficult, but it's not impossible.
No, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying it can be
So I think it takes a kind of a level of consciousness and intentionality.
Exactly.
We have to be conscious of wanting to, re-understand ourselves. We have to be conscious. We have to be intentional about being patient.
Yes.
You understood that the message we are trying to pass across, or the message the other person is trying to pass across, does not get lost in between our own oversight, our ego, so many things in between. There are so many things in between. When someone is trying to tell you maybe you've done something wrong, there is this thing that overclouds your senses. You don't want to listen. You
Yes.
understand? But then it takes the wisest and the most patient of us all to actually listen, understand, and admit to our wrongs.
And also, when we talk about healthy communications, we don't have to be the people passing the message across. We have to put ourselves in the shoes of the receiver.
Exactly.
Because
How would you
When-
receive this if you
Uh-huh.
were in the other
Yeah.
person's shoes?
Uh-huh.
Because after you have spoken to someone, there's this communication that comes from you to the other person. So before you say things that you think might hurt another person, or no matter how okay you want it to come to the person, that English, I don't know.
English lesson building.
So
And
you
this-
have to put yourself first,
In the
because you have
person's
to tell
shoes.
yourself these things.
What you're
because-
saying now brings
Yes.
me right to criticism.
Yes.
We find a lot of us, this Ramadan now, you would see a lot of things. You see your sisters in tight leggings and they want to pray tarawih. How do you communicate with them that, oh, come on, you have to dress properly to pray? Or they want to observe Jummah. On a normal day, you might see them and then you might just say, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide my sister. But then how do you tell them? Or you see someone reading the Quran, reciting the Quran, and in the poorest of manner, maybe that's the best the person could do. How do you communicate with the person? You know, all of these things, like we have been saying, takes patience, it takes tolerance, it takes you being conscious about knowing that this message you want to pass across is actually for the best, as in for it's a purposeful one. So, but you have to take it in the easiest of manner.
What I'm saying
that is
now
what
is,
even the Prophet
what I'm saying is, how do you take this message that you're trying to pass across? How do you take it yourself?
Yeah.
When someone is trying to correct you, or when someone is trying to tell you, this is what I want to do, or is it okay?
You're going back to the same thing.
Yes, exactly.
Because what you're saying now, when someone is trying to correct you, it's all about criticism. You want to tell you that, oh, you're not doing this right, this is the right way to do it.
I picked something from what you were talking about earlier, which is how do you tell a person who comes to pray Tarawih prayers in her leggings or crop top or whatever? There's this mosque. There's this mosque we used to pray at when I was in school in Zaria. It was in a faculty of education back then, and hijabs were hung on walls. This doesn't necessarily have anything to do with this conversation, but I think it's a solution to that.
Yes.
So instead of having those conversations with teenagers or young adults who get embarrassed when you call them, and they know the moment you're wearing a niqab or a hijab, and you call them, particularly when it's about time for Salah or just after Salah, and you call them, and they have an idea
what you want to talk about.
What you want to tell them about. So instead of having those embarrassing conversations,
you can
hide the hijabs in places in the mosque. And so when they come in to pray, they go there and they pick. Or you can even just leave a small notice or a small piece of paper there saying, you need a hijab? Feel free to pick one. Even if they go home with it, you will always find people to
even
donate.
If they refuse to pick it and then you happen to be in the masjid as at that time, you can just take it. Oh, assalamu alaikum, sister. Do you mind putting this on?
Yes.
You understand? Like, you just have to be cautious about this.
I have a cousin that makes corrections with, oh, Mariam, this veil looks nice on you, but you'd be more beautiful with a hijab or something. And you'd be like, okay, thank you. Okay.
You know, that way, even you would not want to get mad at her for correcting you. Like, what?
Throwing shades.
Maybe she needs the cousin more and more around her, you know? So I think, like I said, it's all about being conscious about this, being intentional about passing the right message across, and being patient through, you know, correcting someone or receiving criticism.
Yeah. So, I'd say healthy communication.
This is very important for a thriving society, a thriving organization, and thriving relationship. It is very, very important.
There's barely any part of our lives as social animals, that doesn't have to do with communication. Every single part of it. So whether it's with your husband, or with the kids, or with your colleagues at work, or with your neighbors who have rights upon you, it's really, really important. Yeah. So that brings us to the end of this episode of Tea at Sahur. Join us again tomorrow morning, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alhamdulillah, we want to appreciate all our viewers who have been sending in comments, contributions on our social media handles, and those who have been answering our questions, mashallah. One particular answer was given by Aisha Lawal. I don't know where you sent that from, Aisha Lawal. We appreciate that. The question was, can the world actually come to an end through COVID-19 according to the Quran and the Sunnah? And you gave a very long explanation. Jazakumullah khair. We appreciate that. And we hope that next time when you're sending those answers, inshallah, you make it very simple, sharp with your reference, inshallah. But we still do appreciate that. And to those who have been sending comments, we appreciate you. May Allah reward you abundantly. Here are some of the messages we received yesterday and the day before yesterday on the show, Barakah Sahur. Alhamdulillah, on the note, beautiful note, we wrap up the show, Barakah Sahur, for today. Tomorrow promises to be more informing, educating, and entertaining. Keep it with us. We thank you so much for being part of our morning. Do not forget, this is the month of Ramadan. Do a lot of askar, do a lot of ibadah, and together we're going to come out of Ramadan a better person. My name is Jibril. Follow me. See you tomorrow.